So in app module, we have defined this route that takes a parameter, username. Let me show you how we can extract this parameter in our GitHub profile component. Because in a real-world application, most likely we want to get this parameter and use a service to get the profile of the given user. So let's go to GitHub profile.ts. So here in GitHub profile component, in order to get access to route parameters, we need to inject the activated route class in our constructor. So here I add a parameter called route of type activated route. This is a service that is defined in Angular/router library and is part of the router module that we imported earlier in this section. Now here in ng-on-init, we can get the route parameters from this object. So this .route.param map. That's the property that gives us all the parameters in this route. Now look at the type of this property. It's an observable of param map. You have seen observables in the section about consuming HTTP services. So you know that these observables have a method called subscribe. We can subscribe to them and get values emitted in these observables. So here I'm going to call the subscribe method. You can see that here we need to pass a function that takes a parameter of type param map and returns void. So let's add an arrow function here, param map, or we can call it params. It's shorter. Goes to a code block. Now let's log this on the console and see what is inside this object. So console.log params. Save, back in the browser. So here in the list of followers, I'm going to click the first follower. Now let's take a look at the console. So this is the object we get. It has two properties, keys and params. Let's look at the keys. So here we have only one key, and that is username. Because in app module, we set the name of our parameter to username, okay? Now this object also has another property that is params. And here we have key value pairs for route parameters and their values. So this is the structure of a param map object. Now back here in ng-on-init, let's look at the members defined in this class. So params dot, we have get all, has, and keys. You saw the keys field. This field returns all the keys or all the route parameters. We use the get method to get the value of a given route parameter. We use getAll to get the value of all route parameters, and has to see if we have a parameter by the given name in this object. So here to get the value of the username parameter, we call the get method like this. Get username. And by the way, what we have here is actually not username, it's user ID. So always pay great attention to naming your route parameters, because otherwise you can create confusion for other developers, and this will also increase the cost of maintenance of your applications. So let's go back to app.module and change the name of this parameter to ID. Now back in GitHub profile component, here we need to get the value of the ID parameter. Now this method, as you can see here in the IntelliSense, returns a string. If you need to work with a number, a technique that we use in JavaScript is to put a plus before this. This will convert this string to a number. Now we can store it in a variable like ID. And in a real world application, we most likely send this to a service to get the profile of this user. Something like this, service.getProfile, and we give it this ID. Now we don't need this for now. So let's simply log this on the console. Let's test the application one more time. So here we have the user ID displayed in the console. Now if I go back to the followers list and click on a different user, now in console we have two entries. So this is how we get the route parameters. But you might be wondering why this param map is defined as an observable. This makes it a little bit hard to access these parameters. How come we don't have an API like this? So this dot route of ID. This would be much easier, right? Or potentially we could have this dot route dot param map of ID. This is easier to work with than an observable. So in the next lecture, I'm going to answer this question.